Welcome to the Wayne Bennett podcast, celebrating West Virginia's people, places, and the culture of Southern Appalachia. Now here's your host, Wayne Bennett.
Welcome to Wayne Bennett's podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Bennett. This is episode 167. It's May the 27th. It's a cool day in May. And today we have our guest is an athlete. He's a medical professional. He's coached wrestling and at several different levels. And then he's a social activist. And Alan Fell, welcome.
Thanks, Wayne.
Now, tell me a little bit about your profession. What have you done to make a living all year?
That's a funny story, Wayne. My wife has made a list of the jobs that I've done in my life. And I think she has 20, I think we're up to 20 some.
Really?
Yeah. I've worked just about all my life. I started at 9 years old. I had a paper route, morning call out of Allentown, Pennsylvania. I grew up in Phillipsburg, New Jersey. And I'd get up at 5 a.m. and go past newspapers and come home and have breakfast and then go to school. That was my first job. But I've done a little bit of everything. I went to Rutgers. I was in political science and history and got married between my sophomore and junior year, unfortunately. But I was working as a teaching assistant for a course called Reading Dynamics. And it was speed reading and studying skills, note-taking skills, research skills, paper writing skills for college students. And I was a teacher. I took the course my freshman year, and the professor asked me and there were these training sessions where you learned how to speed read and note-take and study and stuff. And she asked me if I'd be a teaching assistant. It was a paid position, and I was a poor college kid.
Sure.
And I said, sure. So I did that for a couple years. But after we got married, my first wife was a teacher, was learning to be a teacher. But we had a hard time making a go of it with both of us going to school. And so I took a year sabbatical, and I got a first job putting electrical rust-proofing systems into water towers. And then I did that for about 6 months, and then for about a year I worked as a orderly in a mental hospital in Menlo, New Jersey. So I've done a lot of things, but my ex-wife graduated, got a teaching degree. I had a friend I'd gone to Rutgers with who had come down and bought 86 acres up in Doddridge County, and I came down and visited him a couple of times. We did.
Had you been to West Virginia before?
Never before. And I wanted out of New Jersey. I wanted out of New Jersey bad. And I just fell in love with the state. I mean, we were up there on his property, and there was indigo bunnings and scarlet tanagers flying by. And I mean, you're out in the middle of nowhere, and it's just nature, and it's just, you go to New Jersey, and it's, when I moved, and one of the jokes I had is when I first moved to the area that people were talking about the 4-lane. The 4-lane. I said, what are you talking about, the 4-lane? Don't you have 4 lanes in New Jersey? I said, no, we got 16 lanes in New Jersey. And so then we moved here. She got a teaching job here, and we moved in 76.
You talk about 4-lane, like when I was a kid, you go to the end of the hard road and going down all over hard roads. You very seldom see too many dirt roads. But now how did you get into the anesthesia part of?
Well, it's interesting because I ended up when we moved back here, when my ex-wife and I moved back here, the agreement was I'd take a year off and work, she'd get her degree. Then she'd work and I get my degree. So I did my final year, undergrad year at Concord, and got a degree in political science, did a double major, political science and history. Most of my credits were from Rutgers, and they took all my credits from Rutgers. But when I came out, it's like, okay, I got this degree. What do I do now? So I sold insurance. Sold Metropolitan Insurance for a while, for a couple years. And then I got a job selling Ridge Homes. I don't know if you ever heard of Ridge Homes.
No.
It was a company out of Pennsylvania, and you had the property. It was like a glorified Jim Walter Homes. You had the property, and they would provide all the materials to build it. I mean, right down to the carpet and the whole thing. And so I sold a bunch of those.
Kind of like the Jim Walter type.
Yeah, kind of like but advanced, nice stuff. Nice cabinets, nice, good framing, that kind of. But I sold a bunch of them, but they took so long to deliver. It was like, the first year I sold like 7 or 9 houses, and I think they delivered 1. We ended up delivering 1 because it took so long for the process. People got tired of it. And then I got hired away by a local contractor to sell houses for him, because I think I'd sold a couple of people out from underneath him that he was building houses for, or going to build houses for. But he was a shyster. He's now in prison.
So you've had a pretty eclectic.
Yeah, so I said, yeah. And then from there, I knew he promised me the world, took me away, come work for me, promised me this, and I did stuff, and then he stiffed me on it. Long story short, his lead carpenter, I got to be friends with his lead carpenter, and I still had all these contacts from these Ridge Home people that I knew who had property. There was a guy down on Maple Fork Lane that I knew. I had a contact. And this lead carpenter knew this guy. And I said, let's get a contract and build a house for him. You, me. And then he said, well, I got this. We need a third guy. I said, you teach me how to frame and how to be a carpenter, and I'll do all the paperwork and with the contract and the taxes and the payroll and that stuff. That lasted for 1 house. We did that. We built that house down Maple Fork Lane. Then I went to work for a contractor out of Fayetteville. About that time, my wife and I separated. I was living on a piece of property. A guy named Joe Lewis. You ever hear of Joe Lewis from Fayetteville, or from Oak Hill? The Lewis, the Lewis house? Mm-hmm. Well, he's that woman's nephew. He and I got to be friends from running. I was doing a lot of running, and he was a runner. So then I worked for him for a while. We built several houses up around the Summersville area. My wife and I had been separated for a while. I ended up meeting my current wife about that time. And then I became the construction supervisor for Jim Walter Homes.
Really?
Here, yeah. And I did that for a while and hated that. And then decided to go out building on my own. And I built 4 or 5 houses, did a bunch of remodeling. And by that time, my wife and I had gotten married. She was pregnant. We got pregnant with our first son, and had bought a house together. And I'd worked all year long, built a house, did a big remodeling job for a lawyer right down in downtown Pineville. Worked all year long, and I did my taxes, and I turned to her and I said, we're about to have a kid. I need to find a way to make a living. And she says, well, you can get your nursing degree, and then if you really wanted to make money, you could go on and do anesthesia, become a nurse anesthetist. I said, okay. So I went back, did the 2-year nursing degree, worked CCU and at CAMC for 3 years, and then it was originally going to be because you needed a year of critical care experience to apply for anesthesia school. It was originally going to be a year, but then we got pregnant with Ryan, and so I stayed another year and a half, worked 3 years, then did anesthesia there for 2 years. That's where I trained. And it was nice then because at that time they really needed nurse anesthetists, so they paid me a stipend while I went to school, which was nice. So it wasn't a whole lot. It was $1,500 a month, but it helped, We had 3 kids at the time, my daughter and I was raising 3 kids and going to school. And my wife teases me. She says, I'd come home because she was a physician's assistant. She worked till about 8:30 most days, when she worked. She said, I'd come home and there'd be these papers strung out all over the floor, and the kids would be crawling around and stuff. And there's Alan studying. But the way I studied, and what helped me helped me get through it was, I made study tapes. Like I'd take my notes and I'd recite my notes in the tapes, and I'd have to drive back and forth to Charleston every day. So I wouldn't listen to music. I'd listen to my study tape on the way back, on the way there, on the way back. You know, and if we wanted to do, I was doing something with the kids, I'd put my earphones on. I could still do it, and I'm still studying while I'm helping the kids. And it really, I don't know, I'm auditory, I guess, but it really helped, and I did real well. And I had to work for them for 6 years as a commitment, and I did, but it was neat because I could do what was called 24-hour in-house call, which means you were available 24 hours. Sometimes you'd work 18, 19 hours of those 24 hours, but then you'd be off. So that counted as 3 days. So I would take a lot of 24-hour in-house call, and then I had a lot of days off. So I started moonlighting. I moonlighted at Raleigh General and at Plateau, and used to moonlight at the old Beckley Hospital. As a matter of fact, I did Beckley Hospital's last AAA surgery ever.
Really?
Yeah, because I was working at CAMC.
I heard they just sold Beckley Hospital. I don't know who bought it. I think they might change it into some kind of housing, is what I've heard. I don't know. But
Dr. Lute, who was working over there, called me up and said, I haven't done a AAA in years, and they put this one on. And, you know, I was doing them. That's what I was doing down at AAAs and Hearts and that kind of stuff down at Charleston at the time. I said, okay, well, I'll come and do it. So I came and did it.
Now, the people in West Virginia, you know, we have been called the unhealthiest state in the Union, or near the bottom. People are obese. We've got the highest per capita percentage of people that smoke. We have a high percentage of people that don't exercise or do things. Our health care has not been rated well, and I think partly because of the rule. It was just not being able, nobody wants to go provide rural care there all the time because you can't make a living, you know, if you're. But I personally have, the doctors and nurses and people that I've been involved with have been top of the line, you know, very impressive. And what do you think the answer is there?
Well, I think the answer is local. I mean, the people who you're probably being taken care of are your neighbors. They're local. They're people that you know. And those are the ones that are dedicated to taking care of people. I'm just like my son, my oldest son is an anesthetist as well. He works at Plateau. He's better at it than I am, better at it than I ever was. But he's local. He's committed. He's committed to, you know, providing care to this area. And I think part of it is people who go into healthcare for the most part are people who want, there's people who are in it for different reasons. I mean, some people are in it to get rich. And that's obvious, and you know who they are.
Yeah.
But a lot of, especially in the nursing profession, I think a lot of people go into it because they care about people. They want to help people. They want to, you know, it's important. And some of it in the skill, and to have the skills to do some of the things that you do that can save a person's life it's pretty awesome. It's a pretty awesome feeling.
But the doctors very seldom have a private offices anymore. They get hooked up with the franchises, and then they're given quotas, you know. And I had a great doctor several years ago that I was one of his first patients when he got his degree, and was with him for 20 years. And he ran his own private office, and he would see 13 to 14 people a day. He would spend time with you. He was great, just fantastic. But dealing with insurance companies and things like that just got too much for him. And he went and got connected to, I call it a franchise. And now he works 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, no hospital connections. He sees 25 to 30 people a day. He probably spends 10 minutes at the most with each person. And he hates it, but
it's what he's got to do.
You
want to know what my God's honest opinion about it is? I mean, do you really
go
want
ahead,
to know?
sure.
Okay. We are the only industrialized country in the world that doesn't have free medical insurance, free medical coverage for everybody. We're the richest nation in the world, and we're the only, and you know why? It's because it's controlled by people who are making a lot of money by it not being. The insurance companies, the big medical conglomerates like you're talking about.
Yeah.
Those CEOs and those guys are so filthy rich and have so much power and so much control that they're keeping it from happening. It's still going on.
Yeah.
And that's what the problem. And you know what's happening right now. And the thing that scares me the most as a health professional right now, and you're going to see a lot of it with these cuts to Medicare and Medicaid. Do you know how much these local hospitals rely on Medicare and Medicaid for reimbursement? Do you have any clue how much of their income is relying on that? A lot. And you know what's going to happen? That's going to dry up. People aren't going to have it. That people aren't going to go for help. That's going to dry up. These hospitals aren't going to get reimbursed, and you're going to start seeing these little hospitals start to close, and then people aren't going to have health care.
Yeah. And
it's all because these guys want more.
Yeah.
And I see that's the
thing. How much steak can you eat?
That's the thing that gets me. And I guess it's a different mindset. My wife says you got to realize that the people who get there, they don't think like we do. You know, like I think like an Elon Musk. If you had enough money to solve world problems and all you wanted was more.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand that mindset.
It's perplexing. Well, we're going to come back to this.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Let's go back to Phillipsburg, New Jersey, when you were growing up.
Okay.
The name Phil, is that a English name or German name? What is that?
It's a German name.
German.
You want to hear another weird story?
Okay, sure. That's what.
My last name should not be Phil. It should be Walsh.
Really?
Yes. Okay. Here's the story. This is going to get interesting. My dad has, let's see, 2 sisters, 2 brothers. Okay. All Fells. 2 of them aren't Fells. My dad and his younger brother, Red. The rest of them, the 2 girls and the boy, the other 3 are all Fells. They lived in this little, you ever see a house that was divided in half and people lived in one half of the house and people lived in the other half? Well, everybody lived in this house. The Fells, there were 3 kids, my grandmother, Fell, and then there was a boarder. And the boarder's name was Walsh. Well, at some point, my dad's born, his younger brother Red's born. Fell takes off. I don't know what happened. He takes off. So now there's Walsh and my grandmother. Well, not long after that, my grandmother takes off, leaves my dad and Red, and it turns out that my dad's older brother, who was much older, and his wife were a couple of sots, and they had a daughter, so Walsh took the daughter in to raise as well. Well, my grandmother takes off. Here's this Walsh guy, right? He's got my dad, Red, and a non-blood relative or young girl that he's raising. He worked at, Peaburg was a railroad town, and he worked in the rail yards. He was a mechanic in the rail yards. But he raised all 3 of them. When my grandmother took off, she told Walsh that Dad and Red were his sons. But she came back into the picture. I don't know when she came back in the picture. Anyway, my dad ended up taking care of her and her lasted for years when she was probably my age in 70s, all the way until when she died at 95. But she denied on her deathbed that Walsh was the father. And it wasn't until I did a DNA test that I found out that I'm not a Fell, I'm a Walsh, and that Dad wasn't a Fell, he was a Walsh, and that his brother Red wasn't a Fell, he was a Walsh. So I should
That's
be
amazing. This could be a movie. Okay, let's talk about the wrestling part a little bit. When did you get involved in wrestling?
Well, I started out, I was playing midget football. I started playing midget football at 9. And the wrestling coach for the same, it was in Peaburg, it was a huge midget league. There was teams all over the place. Firth Town, Steel Hill, Cops had a team. It was unbelievable. But the wrestling coach said, why don't you guys come out and try wrestling? So I came home and said, I'm going to go try wrestling. So I did. Didn't win a match my first year. Didn't win a match. Got thumped. But there was something about wrestling. And I came back the next year. I won a match. I won 3 matches the next year. Came back. Well, what happened was the first 2 years I wrestled for a team called Steel Hill. And the coach was a drunk. And he'd show up sometimes. And sometimes when he did show up, he'd drunk. So he didn't learn much. And my dad said, the third year, my dad said, do you still want to wrestle? And I said, yeah. So he says, well, we're going to go here. So he took me to Alpha. There was this guy, Tony, I think I said it was an Italian guy. His parents owned an old VHF music hall. It was downstairs had been a bar or something. The upstairs was a hall, a big open room. Well, Tony turned it into a wrestling facility. It was wall-to-wall mats. Wall-to-wall mats. And you didn't practice once a week. You practiced every day. And you learned how to wrestle. And
how old were you at that time?
At that time, I was 11.
You was 11.
I was 11. And I went 13-1 that year. Took third at the midget tournament, the regional tournament, which included teams like Easton, Bethlehem, Allen, Bethlehem, Peaburg, Deerf, that kind of stuff. And just fell in love with wrestling. I don't know, there's just something about, especially when you start doing well, you start loving it better. And then I went to high school, and my coach was a guy called Thad Turner. I don't know if you ever heard of Thad Turner. Lehigh University. That was my high school coach.
Wow.
And actually the wrestling facility at Lehigh is named after Thad. But
did he leave before you graduated?
My senior year.
I thought
I had him for 3 years.
Yeah.
My senior year, Duff came in to coach. And Duff had wrestled at, I think Bloomsburg, had been a Bloomsburg collegiate wrestler. But Thad was amazing. And we had this room. It was the old gym. We had these giant radiators. I mean, probably 16 foot tall, about 4 of them, along one wall. And you could close all the doors, and Turner would turn the heat up to about 85 degrees. And those radiators would be crackling and buzzing the whole practice and just putting off heat. And we all practiced the guys cutting weight all practiced with rubber suits, and then, the wrong way. We practiced the wrong way.
People didn't know any better.
No, but we'd do weigh in, and there'd be an inch of sweat around a puddle around the scales. We had the old slide scales. We didn't have the digital stuff back then.
Well, there's a lot of horror stories. I mean, kids sleeping in sweatsuits and plastic bags, and I'll have to admit, when I was coaching, I didn't encourage it, but I didn't discourage it.
I fell victim to that my senior year. I decided my senior year I wanted to get past districts to regionals. I knew I probably would never get to states, but I wanted to get to regionals, and I figured the best way I looked around and saw what the competition was in the area. And I said, okay, 140, I could do it at 140. I could beat this guy. I could beat that guy. I could beat this guy. I came in weighing 70, somewhere between 70, 75, and I pulled the 45.
Wow.
I won the starting job, but and had beaten two of the guys I would have had to beat at districts. But in practice, I was wrestling against one of my teammates. He lifted me. I went to roll. When I went to roll, he just jammed me into the mat on my shoulder. I tore my rotator cuff and couldn't. I tried to recuperate for a couple of weeks, but I was.
Well, Thad Turner was at Lehigh for probably about 18 years. He was coach of the year in the country, there at one time. But now, when you came, first time that I met you, I was helping a little bit get the Beckley Central team organized. And well, let's go back to Phillipsburg just a little bit. Of course, that was wrestling country. And I've been kind of looking. They had a boy in the finals in New Jersey this year. Got beaten in 3-2, I think. And then I was kind of following that Anthony Knox, the guy who had won 3 straight titles and was going for a fourth at 126 pounds, and got suspended for joining his dad in a fight. And anyway, the judge had okayed him to wrestle, and he won the state championship again easily. I think in the finals was like 18-4 or something. Yeah. Now, he didn't go to Phillipsburg, but
but I know I'm aware of that story. Yeah, I've been following.
Yeah, wrestling. But I'll
tell you another little funny story if you don't mind.
Where you was from though, that was wrestling country, man.
We had, when Turner was there, we had a 56. We didn't wrestle all these tournaments like you do in West Virginia. West Virginia isn't. We did duels mostly. Plus we had a full 9th grade schedule. The 9th grade had their own team, and you went and wrestled other teams, 9th grade teams. But what would go on was, like, if we wrestled Easton, they'd come to our place. We'd have a junior high. We had full junior high teams, every weight class filled. Extras. So you'd come, root for your JV team, and then your varsity would come out, and you'd have your varsity wrestle. And we had, in our gym, they called it the pit. All the bleachers came up to about from here to the wall. You'd be sitting here, and there'd be the mat. And they turn off all the house lights, and we had a spotlight right over the mat. So everything... when you were out there wrestling, you didn't see anybody. All you did was hear. You were out there in the spotlight wrestling.
And this was in the 60s.
It was in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. And we had a 56-match dual undefeated run. We lost to Bethlehem Catholic the year before. When I was in 8th grade, they lost to Bethlehem Catholic. And then we went on a 56 streak run, and we lost to Bethlehem Catholic again in my senior year.
Most of those schools, private schools now. I know Dale Barton's probably
there's still Northampton is a public school, Easton's a public school, Phillipsburg's a public school, Deerf is a public school.
I didn't know. I didn't know for sure.
There is Bethlehem Catholic. There is what's the Jersey school with the private school that all the kids go to.
Well, you have St. John's and some of those. But...
yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of private stuff now, but there's in that area, a lot of the high schools are still public, but it's because it's so big.
Now, when you, like I said, the first time I met you, we were getting the Beckley Central youth team back together. It had folded a year or so, and then a former wrestler of mine, Dirk Snuffer, wanted to get the thing back, and he had a son involved. Dirk. And so I told him, well, you can use Park. I'll stay after and we'll put the mats down, and you guys come and practice. And I won't be helping you coach much, but I'll help you in practice. So you brought your son Ryan out, Of course, we made you a coach immediately once we found your background and you were interested. And I don't even remember how that year went.
I'll tell you what happened. Ryan had come to me and said, because he had heard my wrestling stories ad nauseum, I want to try wrestle. I said, okay. I said, we're going to have to go to Beckley. It's the only place to go around here. So we researching and came over. We're about 3/4 of the way through the season, and we go skiing out at a local place. My older son, his friend, his girlfriend, who's now his wife, and another friend, and Ryan and my wife and myself. And Ryan decided he had already learned how to ski years ago. He decided he wanted to try snowboarding. So we did snowboarding for all day long, and we're out and we're about to go. My older son comes in, and Ryan says, I want to go show him how I can snowboard. I said, okay, one more run and we're going. Well, about 15 minutes later, my older son comes in. I think Ryan just broke his arm.
Oh, God.
Snowboard. And he did. That ended our season there.
So then the next year, you started a program at Oak Hill.
I had been going to when we were at, when we started coming to Beckley, I found Frank Ayler and started going to his high school practice and taking Ryan to the high school practice so he could see, and then jumping in and wrestling some of his kids that he had while I was there. And then Frank told me, I think it was that same year that we started the program, that he wasn't going to do it anymore, that I want to do it. And I said, if nobody else is going to take it, I said, if somebody in the system wants to take it, no, but if nobody else is going to take it, yeah, I'll take it. Well, Joel was over there teaching at the time, Joel Harris, and he got wind of it and he wanted it. I said, by all means, because he had already coached over at West by that time. So he and I got together, and I started the youth league, and then he and I started the junior high team, because we didn't have a junior high team.
And that's, you guys realize that's what you got to do to compete, and for sure. And in 2002, started noticing Oak Hill had not really showed up in the state tournament or anything much, and David DeQuasi, he placed in the state,
our first place winner,
and then people started noticing. Plus, you had a pretty good bunch of guys coming through. Now, there had been a youth program there, and I'm not sure they were there 1 year or 2 years, but there was a guy named Bill Stutler had started a program, and he had a lot of kids involved. And he either had he was in our league, our Y league, and they ran it, like I said, 1 year or maybe 2 years, I'm not sure, but then he just moved.
Before us.
Yeah, and he just moved away and didn't tell anybody. And actually, the person that rented from called me and said, there's a red mat in the garage out here, and I'm trying to rent this place, and is it yours? And I said, no, but we'll take it off your hands if you need. So we went over and got the mat.
Where'd you take that?
It was a 25-foot square mat,
small,
but it was one of a little cheaper quality, and it started chipping real quick. We didn't get much use out of it, but they did get a start there, and then I don't know whatever happened to Stutler, but in 2004 is when Joel took a year off to study for his PhD. Now, who took over then?
We had Bick Ulrich took over. Bick Ulrich took the head job, and I assisted.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Do you remember? You know Bick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I didn't know for sure.
His boys.
Now, in 2007, all of a sudden, Oak Hill started showing up a lot, here and there, and that's when Ryan was a junior or senior.
7 was when he was a senior.
Okay, and he won the state champion. He was your first state champion And 215-pound class?
Yeah.
And
215.
And then later on, Christian McKinney in 2017, 2008.
Christian Lively. Christian Lively.
Lively, yeah. Christian Lively won in 2018, I think it was. But
we had a finalist this year, freshman.
It was 2008 is when you guys had these kids had come through the program and stuff, and you guys won the Coalfield Conference. You won the regions. You took 10 to the state.
10 to the states. One place winner.
What happened?
They fell apart. Went to states and choked. That's all it was.
Wow.
I think the only one we have place out of that is our junior high coach right now. It was Braden Evans. He was our only place winner.
Because I was really expecting some big things. I mean, I think it was like 4 teams out of the region beat you guys in the states. You know, Liberty and Independence, Greenboro West.
They all choked.
Yeah.
I can't explain it other than that, you know.
And Joe had, I had an experience kind of similar to that. The last year that I coached wrestling, I had a pretty good team, and at Park, and we had earlier back in the old days, we had won Huntington 4 times and placed second twice, and got beat by 1 point in one of those. We placed second, but the last team that I coached, we were pretty solid. We had. And I actually thought, I wasn't sure we were going to go to Huntington and win, but I knew we would be down there battling. And we got a couple bad draws right off the bat. And it told me a little bit about the kids. The kids I had that year, when they lost, they wasn't going to come back, and come through the consolation. Kids I'd had before, they get beat. They coming back, and so we ended up like 8th place, and Independence and Shady had beat us down there, and we beat them everywhere. But it was just, we just totally flopped. I mean, I had kids that should have been in the finals and didn't even get a point. And it was just I couldn't figure out what happened, but it was just one of them things. But now Joe left. And 2010, somewhere along, you took the program over for 4 years, and then you resigned in 2014 as the head coach. Is that when Dave Vincent came along?
Yeah, Dave.
Okay, but
Dave worked with me for a couple of years. He's worked with us in and out, when he could, when his job allowed him to, in and out with us for years and years and years, and. And that was always a plan for him to take over the program. And
Dave came from a good program up at West Liberty,
he's a local. Well, he grew up in north of here, and wrestled up north, so he grew up here. Wrestled in the state.
Now but you volunteered on different levels after that, and
I go to a lot of the practices, and last year I did kind of non-live technique sessions. I had a bunch of kids come out, and I just go over different technique because I study it a lot. I watch a lot of wrestling and study it a lot. And
now you created the Tigger Award. What was that?
That was kind of like what you were just talking about. It's like somebody who keeps plugging, keeps going, no matter what. Like if you come out in a tournament and you lose in the first round, instead of folding your feathers and going back to your nest and hibernating, you shake it off and get back out there and do it again. I mean, that's one of the beauties of wrestling. I mean, what other scholastic sport do you have a sport where you go out there and somebody hands you your head and you got to go get yourself together, and in 45 minutes you got to go out there and toe the line with somebody different.
Yeah.
Or you could.
Well, that's where you win. You win not everybody can be a state champion. And you win in the consolation. Your team wins in the consolation, but it's hard to tell kids. It's hard to get kids to do that. Once they lose, they come down with their tail between their legs, and then just kind of you just never know. Now Oak Hill, they have had. We're talking about the kids transferring and things like that, and the legislature, I thought, was maybe going to address that in the session this year, but they didn't. And so it looks like it's going to be the same for a while. Kids are allowed one-time transfer unless they move and participate in sports. Still not supposed to recruit, but it happens a lot. But you guys had kids that over the years, some pretty good kids that have left the area and went to another high school and wrestled. Variety of reasons. Not all of them was the same reason. Some it was convenient with their parent working. Some, but it had to have an effect on you. I mean, did it bother you? Ever bother you? Or
well, I think what somewhat it did, but by the same token, I look at it a different way too. Osborne and that group created a pretty good thing over at Woodrow. The Arsenal and having that facility and having some place for those kids to go all the time and a way to work all the time and improve and get better. And it showed. Look what they did. Look what he did. Look what they produced. Mm-hmm. Now, are some of the kids or two of those kids that are on that team and very successful from Fayetteville? Yeah. But you know what? I understand why they went there. And you know what? They got college. Both of them got college scholarships through it. So it was a smart move. I think in the next couple of years, our room is going to be the room to be in. I think, we're going to have Solomon there. Solomon just won Tournament of Champions. He came home last night from Virginia Beach. He wrestled for Team Shut down there, and he went 7-2 or 7-3 or something down there in the 3 days of wrestling that he did down there for the Team Shut. And I think they took third overall. The team did. Only freshman on the team. I've been coaching him since he was
the adage
10 years old.
Success breeds success, and you've got some good looking kids, Solomon and all. Some of those guys going to be there next year.
Seth is there.
So things are looking good. Now you have for all the years that you have wrestled and coached and those things. You were recognized last year, the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, Lifetime Service to Wrestling. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And that's just one way of wrestling can give back. I mean, it's not, some people it may not mean anything, but it's just a way of the association. You don't have to be a world champion or anything like that, but you put in the time, you put in the years, you put in the money. I mean, there's just a way of saying thank you, and I hope it means a lot to you.
It means a whole lot to me. It means. I mean, it's humbling. It's very humbling.
And it's a good.
None of this that I ever did, I did.
Well, you guys, that was an excellent group you came through with too, and some of the speeches were, and that day would have been a great day to rob a bank or something in Fayette County because all the wrestling people were down there, man. They were showing our support, and it was a special, very special time, I think. And
well, that's for me, what I've gotten, the reason, I can remember. Joel's father-in-law was the principal of Collins when we started this program, and one of the things he said to me is, Mr. Perry said to me, "Now, I know your son's involved in this, and the minute he's gone, does that mean that you're no longer involved in any of this?" I haven't had the dog in a fight since he graduated in 2007, and I'm still in there, dogging it. The thing I get out of it is I get to help shape young men, because part of what I see it is not just teaching you how to wrestle, but how to be a man.
Yeah.
How to be a leader. It's like, I mean, that's one of the things. It's just like,
and these guys come back, and in my experience, now that they have social media, I have guys contacting me that I coached, and I remember them when they were 11 years old, and now they've got families and they got kids that are in college, some of them, and it is special that they do stay. They will get back with you and show you. And you got to take some pride in it, I mean, you didn't do it all, but you definitely didn't hurt them in it.
No, you had a part of it.
Yeah, and
our middle school coach, Braden Evans, I started coaching him when he was 6 years old. He was one of my first youth league guys. 6 years old. I used to call him my golden boy because at the time when we started off, nobody knew how to get anything, and we were ordering stuff. And I said, "What size shoes do they wear?" I got all their money, and I just, whatever they had on discount at that size, I got, So he ended up with these shoes that were golden. So I used to call him my golden boy.
Well, he's got the baby with the son that just had a son, and that's may keep him around coaching for a while.
He's
never know though.
He's got plans. I mean, he's great. He's got the plans for we need another facility because we're still, the junior high still practices in what we call the dungeon that the plateau graciously lets us use over there that I got them to let us use years ago. That's a funny story too. They bought that building years and years ago, and I think, John, that's back in 2000. It'd been the Ford dealership that used to be the repair shop. And I went over there one day, and it was just empty. And the back had all these shelves with parts and grease all over the place and stuff. But it was huge. I said, I came over to the administration. If you let me use that, I'll go in. I'll clean it up for you. You get a garbage bin. I'll clean all that. I'll pressure wash it. I'll paint it. Okay, so we did, and we had that for a year. We had that for a year, and they came to me and said, "We like that space. We're going to put our senior circle in there." I said, "Where am I going to go?" "We can go in the basement." So the basement was the dungeon. It was filled with 50 years of X-rays down there, and so we got rid of all that and power washed it. But every time it rained hard, it flooded. So we ended up building it up on pallets and plywood and putting our mats on that. And still use it. Wow. The dungeon.
That's, I had at Park, the last few years, we had to practice in the cafeteria, and we'd roll the tables up and we'd roll the mats out and we'd practice, and then we'd roll the mats up, and then we had to move the mats out of the cafeteria because the health people said we couldn't do that. And then, but I actually had a crew of guys there at the end, and I gave them all shirts, the mat crew, and I would let them out of the last period class about 10 minutes early, and man, everybody wanted to be on the mat crew, and it worked out great. They always did a good job. They kept it. They cleaned the mats, everything. It was really neat. But now let's talk about another thing besides the Wrestling Hall of Fame. You're one of the few people that has got 2 squeeze of the water bottles from Wayne Bennett on wrestling, and that was 1999 and 2017. So that's quite an illustrious award.
What were those for? Do you remember what those were for?
Now let's talk about the biker. You ride a bike a lot, don't you?
Yeah.
And you've actually competed.
I was a sponsor rider 30-some years ago. A sponsor rider. There was a pro team out of West Virginia, Gomart.
Really?
Yeah, I was on I wasn't their A team. Their A team.
How did you get into the biking?
I used to do a lot of distance running. Like marathons, 10Ks, 20Ks. I did that, the Charleston distance run. I did the Marine Corps Marathon. I did the Cherry Blossom Classic. I did there there used to be a 10-kilometer down in the other side of South Charleston, those kind of things. I did those, but I ended up hurting my back to the point where I couldn't, and I think a lot of it was from the running, because I was doing 8-10 miles a day of running training. And I hurt my back, and but still wanted to stay fit, so started bike riding. Then met Mark McClung. I don't know if you know Mark McClung.
I do.
Mark McClung. I met Mark McClung, and he says, why don't you try some racing? So I tried some racing. Oh, I like this, and started getting fitter, lighter, riding more, focusing on my stuff, and then eventually applied to be on the Gomar team. Got accepted.
Oh, now they have I used to run a lot of races and stuff back in the old days, and I ran 5 marathons. I ran the Marine Corps Marathon 3 times. I ran the Maryland Marathon. They used to have a West Virginia Marathon. I think they going to start it back up again. And I did a Cherry Blossom 1 year. And I got into I never did bike much, but I got into the kind of the same thing. Biathlon, you run and then ride a bike. And so I started doing that. And then I did a couple of sprint triathlons up at Richwood. You swim and bike and run. And then over at Marlington, you ran, canoed, or kayaked and biked. And so I started out on an old bike that I bought at a flea market, and I said, well, I'm going to have to get me a good bike because these guys were coming in. Uh-huh. So I went down to the bike store downtown, and I saw a Cannondale bike at that time that the guy goes, I'll make you a heck of a deal on this thing. And I had never spent more than $60 on a bike he made me a good deal, and I took that thing, and I enjoyed that bike, man. I rode a lot, and but I never actually was into just a bike race. I was into biathlon or triathlon, but I got to a point now. I have some vertigo problems, and I'd be scared to death to get out on the road on a bike. I could still ride trails or something, and but we did. My nephew and I did one from Cass to Caldwell on the trail.
That's nice.
That's a nice
trail.
That's 70-some miles. We did that.
That's beautiful.
We started at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we got done at 4 o'clock that evening.
That's beautiful.
And we saw bears, bald eagles. I mean, it was something else. But
I'll tell you a bear story. There used to be a race up in Richwood. And you went, you started in Richwood, and you went out to the visitor center, turned around at the visitor center, came back, and you turned up. Was it Summit Lake? Is that the lake that's?
No, that's the one I went to.
Yeah, and then you finish up top of the hill. Well, I got in a breakaway with a bunch of guys, and we after the turnaround, and about 10 of us, and we're flying down that road coming down towards Summit, and this black bear comes. We hear this crash, 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 and this black bear comes and runs right. And we're doing 25, 30 miles an hour coming down through there, probably more than that. And he runs right. I mean, from here to that right there. And she runs in front of us, jumps over the other side and crashes down the other. And the guy next to me says, "That was a bear." I said, "Yeah, it was." He said, "That wasn't a little one either." I said, "No, she was full size."
We used to have some races around here, and when they had the Kmart series, and
yes, I remember that.
Lance Armstrong raced here twice, and Pete Tirico was huge. He brought in all these races, and then they had the race where you just go around in circles down through town. And
Criterium.
Yeah, Criterium. And they
I hated Criterium.
did that for a few years, and everybody was really into biking. I mean, people were buying the bikes up and stuff. But then it seemed like when Lance Armstrong got caught for doping or cheating or whatever, it just seemed like the interest, there was no more real good Americans in the Tour de France, and it just seemed like the interest just dropped drastically. Now, in Charleston, they got the bike races this week. And
that was impressive.
Picking back up. But let's talk about being an activist. The first time that I actually ever saw your name was in 1990, and you had signed a petition to end the Gulf War. And they had them listed in the newspaper, the people that had signed that. In 1993, you had written a letter to the editor about you thought that a drunk driver who killed somebody should be charged for murder. Do you remember that letter? Okay. And you have been on social media, probably are not real appreciative of today's administration, I guess. And I don't know enough to, when people start quoting, and I don't know enough to even argue.
I guess let me explain my background a little bit. I mean, it might make it clearer for you. Let me tell you about my father. My father was a politician. He was a city commissioner for a couple of years, and then he became a county politician called the surrogate. They don't have him in West Virginia, but he was a surrogate. But I told you about the Walsh thing. I told you about my dad. You see where he came from. He enlisted in the Army when he was right out of high school. Came in as a private. Well, he was a smart man. But within a couple of years, he's now a captain. And he's training troops in Puerto Rico in order to go fight in World War II. And they come one day and say he was married. My older brother was born. My mom during camp in Puerto Rico, and my dad comes home and says they asked for volunteers to go to war, and I volunteered.
Wow! And
so he went to the Bulge, and he ended up Silver Star, Bronze Star, Battle Ribbons. He ended up wounded, Purple Heart. There was a book called A Time for Trumpets about the Battle of the Bulge. He's written up in that about some of the stuff he did there. So here's this poor guy, comes from a broken family, raised by this guy. He's not sure whether he's his dad or not his dad. Comes out. My mom's father was a tool and die maker for Ingersoll Rand up in Phillipsburg. They were big in Phillipsburg. But he was also the head honcho, Republican honcho in the county, in Warren County. He didn't like my dad. My dad came from the wrong side of the tracks and, called him a rag. My dad used to recycle to generate some money, and he called him a rag picker because of it and that kind of, but my dad always worked, So they clash. Now my dad comes back from the war hero. Guess what? He's political fodder. Hey, Don, do you want to run for town commissioner? We'll back you. Walks through it. Walked right in twice, like the town commissioner. Runs for surrogate, wins that, 2-3 times. They had a guy from our county, a guy named Wayne Dumont, owned an oil company. He ran for governor of New Jersey 3 times. Lost by a landslide, worst all 3 times. The 3rd time he ran, my dad, in the primary, my dad backed his opponent. So Dumont decided my dad had to go the next year when he was up for re-election. My dad had a lot of flaws. He was a heavy drinker, didn't take care, smoked a lot, didn't take care of himself. He had his first heart attack when he was 45. My senior year, he's up for re-election, has another heart attack, can't campaign. And Dumont throws this guy in the primary against him, backs him with all kinds of money. They're out politicking. My dad can't politic. He spent a week in Warren Hospital in an oxygen tent. So he can't go out and campaign. He loses the primary by 50 votes.
Wow.
The guy that they put in against him loses the general election by a landslide. The Democrat who my dad had beat the time before beat this guy by a landslide. So they lost the office anyway. So I know politics. And my own grandfather worked against my dad in that election. Not a nice guy. I didn't really like my mom's dad too much. But politics is dirty. mean, and the reason I speak up is because I'm scared, Wayne. I'm scared of what this guy's trying to do. I'm pretty certain that in this bill that they're trying to get rammed through, one of the things they put in there, one of the amendments they put in there, is that he's allowed to ignore the Supreme Court for up to a year. If the Supreme Court says you got to do something, you have a year to comply to. I mean, wouldn't that scare you a little bit? Doesn't that scare you a little bit? That somebody would have that kind of power?
Oh, sure.
I think, and I also think they have, if he thinks there's something wrong with the election, he has the right to suspend elections. I mean, doesn't it, when you think about what's going to happen in the midterms, because I think the Republicans are going to get trounced in the midterms with what they're doing.
What can you do?
I think what you do is you elect Democrats. Not that the Democrats are much better. They're not much. I know that. The truth of the matter is as a political science and history major, we are what we've always been. We're an oligarchy. We're not a democracy. The oligarchs put these people out there, back these people, and say, you can choose between these people because they got our backs. You can choose them. And it's never been more evident than it is now. Who were the four guys sitting behind Trump when he got inaugurated? 4 richest men in the world sitting right behind him. What happened? What happened? Taking the money from Medicaid, Medicare, poor people, food programs that are feeding kids in schools. And where's it going? It's the biggest transfer of wealth that's ever occurred that's going on right now. What is our president doing? His wealth, since he took office, has increased by $3 billion because he's selling that mem coin, 2 mem coins, him and his wife have done, has marketed them billions of dollars. He's selling to the highest bidder. His son started a club, said, you want to have direct influence, my father's ear? You join my club for $2 million.
Most of the people that get into politics get richer?
Yeah, they all. The ones that are ruling us right now. Democrat. They were talking. People said to me, Jim Justice is going to get in there. That's going to be. I said, you got a coal billionaire, but who's he replacing? He's replacing an oil and gas billionaire. The guy he's replacing drives a Maserati and lives on a yacht. What do you think? I know where he came from, but what do you think right now he has in common with Joe Blow?
Well, I guess the reason I don't really put my head in the sand, but I'm 75 years old, and I would like to live the rest of my life in peace and serenity. That's my goal. I don't want to get up and be angry. I don't want to be obsessed. I don't want to be totally absorbed into a cause, because that's a lot of work and takes a lot of energy.
It does.
It's not that I don't care, but I guess I made a choice. I don't know. Maybe I'm a bad guy for that.
No, I understand where you're coming 100%, because I think the answer to all what the stuff that I was saying, the fear that I have about where this country's heading and what's going on, who controls this and who controls what's going on. I do fear that. But the thing that I have and that you have in your approach is, the world needs good people. The world needs people who care about other people. The world needs people who look out for other people. And I feel like I've helped raise that. I've helped create good people. You've helped create good people. People who care about. I've got a daughter who's a nurse practitioner in Asheville, Carolina. I've got a son who's a nurse anesthetist in Oak Hill. I've got a son who's a pharmacist and a daughter-in-law who's a physical therapist. And my youngest grandson just won an award. He got the kindness award. And his teacher said about him, I can tell he's been exposed to kids with disabilities because anybody that he sees that has is kind of lacking or has some kind of disability, he takes under his wing and helps. And raising people like that is what we need. I mean, you need, and I told his parents and I told him, that award means more to me than being the kid who got straight A's.
Yeah. Now, what's on Alan Phil's bucket list? I mean, what is there something out there that you would like to do?
Yeah, my daughter and I were going to, in September, there's a great mountain pass. It's a road that's in the Giro Italia. It's called the Stelvio. It's huge. It's a huge climb.
Oh.
I've climbed the Alpe d'Huez, I've climbed La Grande Colombier, and I climbed La Toussier in France during the Tour de France 12 years ago. The Alpe d'Huez was pretty magical. Do you know Alpe d'Huez? Are you familiar with that? Tour de France has this stage that includes this mountain climb. It's called Alpe d'Huez, and it has 21 switchbacks. And you come up and you turn the corner, and you come up and you turn the corner, and you climb this mountain by doing these 21 switchbacks. And there's famous spots. There's a church in one of the corners, and it's called Dutch Corner because every year that the race goes through there, the Dutch all congregate at that church, and they all wear orange, and they're all.
And your daughter's going to climb with you? She
and we were. Oh yeah, she's a heck of a climb. She's a heck of a more mountain biking and gravel racing than anything. But
well, good luck.
But we were going to climb that. We were going to climb the Stelvio. But then, unfortunately, my wife developed breast cancer. We're in the middle of going through that right now, the chemotherapy right now. She's doing well, but it's
good.
Chemo stinks.
Well, Alan, I appreciate you coming and talking to me, man.
I appreciate you having me. I can't tell you how much. I've
And,
enjoyed it a lot.
And I always enjoy seeing you at the tournaments. You're the guy that's got the good attitude, and I know you do a lot of good for the youth, and I know they appreciate you. And keep it up. We want to keep guys like you around, and I think especially when you see some of your former wrestlers coming back and coaching and giving back, and it's special for you. And
we got Aaron Shoemake is doing our and Scotty are doing our youth team, and they were both former wrestlers. Braden's doing the middle school team.
Yeah. And sometimes not everybody's cut out to be a coach, and they'll find out very quickly, if they're not cut.
And that's true in all levels. That's true in all levels. I mean, Ryan will tell you that.
Yeah,
and Ryan had coaches that were excellent athletes, but just weren't very good coaches.
Well, since you mentioned it, don't you have a granddaughter that wrestles?
I've got. Ryan's daughter has been coming. He started this Grappalachia thing. He had a lot of success with girls. He coached the middle school team up in Morgantown, one of the middle school teams up in Morgantown for a while. But he had this group of girls that he had, and they won the first year they had the girls junior high states. They won it outright, and he only had 4 or 5 girls. Second year he took 7 girls. He lost to Charlestown, came down with 25 girls or something, and won the thing. And they took second. But they've gone on. That Maddie she was just won the freestyle states. Wrestles in all the big tournaments. And they have a group of girls that I call Ryan's girls, about 4 or 5 of them and all. And they're still all in it, still doing good. But he started this thing called Grappalachia, where he has girls just come out and they don't do any live wrestling. He just teaches them technique.
Yeah, it'll get more competitive too. When something first starts out, several girls or may want to get involved, and then when it starts getting more competitive, some of them attrition will take place.
I've got my oldest son's middle child, Avery, who's a heck of an athlete. She's a big soccer player. She played basketball last year. She's just an athlete. I've got her. I think I got her talked into coming out next year. She could be a freshman next year. And I just told her, I said, you don't have to wrestle any boys. I've got another girl that she plays soccer with who wrestled for me last year, and she's been working on her. I said, come out and just be her partner. And I said, we'll teach you how to wrestle. You don't have to wrestle any boys, and you don't have to compete. We'll just take you to the all-girls tournaments and let you compete in that.
Yeah, sure. Well, getting them out there is important. You never know. But again, I appreciate you coming and talking to us, and we'll get you back sometime, and we've got some more things we want to talk about.
I appreciate it a lot.
Appreciate you.
I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you very much.
And I don't want to get off here before there was a girl named Abigail Harlan who gave the graduation speech at Oak Hill High School this past weekend. I think she was the valedictorian, and did a great. It's on Facebook, and you can listen to it. And she did an excellent job talking about the importance of home and your hometown, regardless of where your career and life takes you. The importance of home. Did a great job, and I commend her. And anybody else out there that'd like to be on our podcast, you can contact me at awbennett50@gmail.com, and we'll get you on here. And until next time, remember, if you're not dead yet, you're not done yet. And this is Wayne Bennett, and God bless you.